India, in terms of trafficking as a whole, has the largest trafficked population in the world. It's almost all internal. It's a challenge because not a lot of other countries are pulled to engage in India because they're not involved in trafficking in India. It's really an Indian problem. Because it's a way of life, there's certain challenges with that, but also certain opportunities with that. There's an incredible amount of need. Employment is very much a part of the solution in India. There you're typically dealing with survivors. We are working towards some preventative work in villages that we know basically their only industry is trafficking their daughters. And we're planning towards that in the near future. And there's organizations doing great work in terms of rescue and aftercare, but if there's not a sustainable freedom at the end of it, then they won't really be free. In terms of Moldova, it's a very different dynamic. One, you have a completely different culture. You have a European culture. There's very little incentive to stay because there's widespread corruption. In terms of trafficking, Moldova has looked very different, whereas India is all internal. Moldova is external, so the trafficking is happening with people being sent out of the country typically into Western Europe and then on into the Middle East. So both labor and sex trafficking have been epidemic, and there's estimates of about 1 million people that have been trafficked out of Moldova. So in Moldova, you've already lost the fight if someone leaves the country. So there, the goal is really to employ them so they don't need to leave, because unemployment rates are still so high and the need for employment is so great. But the skill sets, because you're dealing preventatively as opposed to with survivors, so the skill set level is different. The Moldovan women still sew their clothing, so for us and what we produce, that's worked out to be a really amazing combination. We do products in particular with Free at Last for Dillards that incorporates sari, and so we have some of the piecework done by the women in India and the sari fabric from there, and then we send that to Moldova to be produced and finished. And so it's been really amazing to kind of combine these two countries.